Okay, great, thanks. So I wanted to just say a quick thank you to everybody for holding these hearings. It's really important for us to be able to speak with the government about spending priorities. I represent the Organic Council of Ontario. We've been in the province since 2006. We were created as an umbrella organization to act as a permanent collaboration along the value network from producer all the way through to eater. So we have representation not just from farmers, but from processors, from brokers, from sellers, retailers, and the general public. So I'm going to start with just a quick philosophical bit, and then I'm going to give you a couple of really quick specific asks. Just generally, we recognize this government's focusing on the economy. We couldn't agree more. It's the most important thing. But we don't want to see that we're losing what's becoming the new conventional wisdom, and that's that we have to think about the triple bottom line when we're thinking about the economy. And there is no point in investing in economic opportunities today that hurt our goals around social and environmental sustainability over the long haul. So for example, when we push for bigger, better, faster, more agriculture with a focus on yield and size and scope as opposed to what's good for the farm community, we end up hurting our rural economies in the long haul. So just as a point of invitation to consider what's behind the kinds of jobs that we're creating, or what's behind the places where we're focusing, particularly in agriculture, our money. So if our money is going to promote programs that focus on monocultures, for example, that may create jobs today and it may sell some more corn today, but it doesn't necessarily build the kind of economies we want to have in the future. And to that end, I want to speak specifically to the need to start to name organic, specifically in our agricultural budgets. For example, in 2010, Quebec government invested $5.1 million specifically in organic agriculture in 3 areas. They invested in extension and research, they invested in marketing, and they invested in transition, where programs actually paid farmers to transition to organic. So we don't see that sort of programming here. What our farmers are told is to build into the existing programs and find the support dollars there. We've done a really good job as a sector of accessing OMIF and the Growing Forward projects, and we're really thankful that those projects are there, but without naming organic specifically as a program stream, it makes it much more challenging to build the kinds of projects that are forward-thinking as opposed to reactive. So specifically, there are two asks that we have. The first one is we would like this government to reinstate the organic crop lead at OMAFRA. We find it unconscionable that when we are growing 12 to 15% post-recession in a market that's growing 3 to 4%, and where up until at least the most current layoffs, it was the #1 driver of the economy in the province, and we don't have, out of 600 plus staff at OMAF, a single person dedicated to the organic sector, it's just not okay. So we're asking that rather than having that job on the shoulders of someone who already had a full-time job, that you hire now. It's been 2 years since Hugh Martin left this position. We think it's time that you acknowledge the importance of the sector and reinstate that position. You know, for $150,000 that it would cost to hire someone and the support staff that they would need, we think it's a fairly small investment to send a strong signal to the rest of agriculture that you value organic. And then the last piece concretely that we have to ask for, our farmers currently pay checkoff dollars to their various commodity groups. So our grain farmers pay to the Grain Farmers of Ontario, our dairy farmers pay to the Dairy Farmers of Ontario. And then the various organizations are expected to take those checkoff dollars and invest them back into improving the sector. So some of that money goes into research and development, some of it goes into marketing, and it is the way that these groups access Growing Forward $2. Organizations like ours and the Ecological Farmers of Ontario and FarmStart, in order to access those programs, we have to now go out and fundraise our 25 to 50% contribution and can't access money that farmers have already paid to be put into those pots. So we've been able to start to develop some really good relationships with the commodity groups, but clearly there's a lot more cultural shift that needs to happen before the conventional organizations really see their role in partnership to grow the organic sector. And so we can get letters of support, but finding someone to step up and economically support the kinds of projects we're promoting hasn't happened yet. So if we want to see the $1 billion of sales that are happening in organic in Ontario be accrued to Ontario farmers, we're going to need to invest in helping them do that. I'll take your questions.
Super. left about 9 minutes.
Well, we can catch up, so we're all right with that.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for appearing before the committee today. I just have a question. What's your organization's sort of impression, or what does your organization think about the Local Food Act and the Local Food Fund?
We're really excited about the Local Food Fund and the Local Food Act. One of the things that we brought forward to the group about the Act specifically is a recognition that for many people, local is proxy for other values. So people may say they want local food, but they want their local food to also be economically sustainable, socially sustainable, and environmentally sustainable. We've seen studies, for example, where people have 16% of interviewees on a 2010 study at a Vineland thought that local meant GMO free. So there's a lot of confusion about what local is, but what people are really asking for is localized food. It's not just a postal code. It's a whole food systems approach. We'd really love to see some specific language around organic and agroecology in both the fund and the Act as we move forward. So, for example, you have given us a really great tool in the Foodland Ontario Organic designation, and yet there's been no dollars specifically allocated to promoting that brand. Most Ontarians don't know we have it, let alone our farm community. So we'd love to use the Local Food Fund to be able to support the development of that brand. The way that things happen truthfully right now is when we write grants, we dance around the O word. We can't come out and say specifically this project is supporting organic, or we're going to, because it comes across like it's picking a winner. And unless that language is written specifically into these acts and into the program dollars, we are constantly fighting and watering down some of the activity that we want to do so that we're quote unquote inclusive. So if you want to make the Local Food Fund really fly for increasing the amount of food being grown organically, we're going to name those programs specifically in there. Another piece to that under Local Food Act that we'd like to see is moving towards some kind of provincial regulation for the term organic. Currently we have a loophole right now where, because organic falls under the CFIA's jurisdiction, it only applies when a product transfers borders. So Ontario product that moves to Manitoba must be certified organic. But if I grow it here in Ontario and I sell it down the street at the market, I'm not required to certify. So it's starting to decrease trust in the marketplace about what organic really means. We have a committee meeting nationally right now as part of our national standards review to look at small scale certification and see if we can come up with a system that recognizes the difference of threat to the system from small scale producers versus imported product. Right now we have a situation where our small guys have to meet the same sort of routine for the inspection system as bringing in foreign product, and we think we can come up with a system that can make it less onerous for the local producers. We'd like to see this government working with us in partnership on that. Simply a $20,000 or $30,000 grant to study the situation for how this regulation is impacting and what we could maybe do moving forward would be really helpful as well. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much.
Others?
Yes, thank you. I was curious about the fact that the need to reinstate the organic crop lead in OMAFRA. Mr. Martin had left 2 years ago.
Yes.
Can you tell me the rationale
why he wasn't replaced? Because there was a decision at the government level to cut 10% of funding across the board where we can, and there's just a lot of not hiring happening in middle and upper management in every department that doesn't necessarily reach to the political level. So, it was a way of being able to find some savings. Now, Hugh did a really good job. There are a lot of folks across OMAFRA who have organic as part of their job description. But we used to see meetings between 4 and 6 times a year where we would go and meet with a selection of crop specialists and others. Those meetings are not happening. They're a little bit willy-nilly amongst OMAF as people can find time. The job was given to Evan Elford, who was already the emerging crop specialist. He has made it to 1 of my 12 board meetings in the past year. Because he just simply does not have time. He's doing the best that he can with the resources that he has, but we have no one paying attention either at the agronomic level or even more importantly at the business development level specifically to this organic opportunity.
So it really sounds like more of a challenge around a job description and an individual or 2 or 3 and maybe some direction at the top of the food chain.
What we need is a person specifically whose job it is to develop this sector.
Well, I guess we could agree to disagree. Lots of sectors do not have specific.
I'm going to suggest that if you tried to do my job and work with the conventional sector and you understood the roadblocks and the barriers that are in the way of getting there, you would understand the need to have a specific person at OMAF whose job it is to help shift the culture of agriculture toward agroecology. There's a lot of work that happens that doesn't look like productive work. That is the work of changing minds. And without having someone specifically focused on organic, then it becomes a backseat to other things. Or please recall that, and it's important, I know it's hard to understand if you're not in agriculture. Organic is not simply just another choice in agriculture. It's a fundamentally different approach to how we grow food and structure our food system. So when it becomes an add-on conversation, then it becomes a conversation about what's the input we're allowed to use that's okay with organic, and not a fundamental rethink about how we approach agriculture. So it would be a little bit like saying, well, we've got a chaplain, he's Jewish, he can kind of cover the Christian stuff. They're completely different approaches to the way that we fundamentally approach things. And I don't think that adding it to someone else's portfolio, whose job it is to primarily serve the chemical agriculture sector, who think very differently about what it is that we're up to, it's just not possible to have it a workable situation. Even Manitoba, a province with, certainly not the size of population we have here, has its own organic business development lead. I think that we can do at least that well.
And it's an interesting debate because certainly there are lots of folks who have double responsibilities. So the other question that I wanted to ask was the whole issue around research and development.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could give me some idea about what is happening or not happening, who's involved. And then, of course, some discussion maybe about the recent issue around pesticides being found in the organics.
Yep.
Because I'm interested in the fact that and I agree that we probably should be a provincial standard of some sort.
Yeah. So just really quickly, research and development, we've got a science cluster money that's national. This government is a year and a half delayed in releasing the funding that was announced. So we're actually losing projects because funding partners are disappearing. So there was an initial investment in the first round of science cluster. I think it was around $5 million in total between government and the public. We're looking at another $3 or $4 million with this round, and that's it. That's all the money that's really been spent specifically on organic. We have lots of good organic research that's happening under Growing Forward 2 and has happened under the OMAF U of Guelph partnership. Again, it's not specific to organic, so people, we haven't seen that folks are not getting research grants the way that we're not seeing the development work happen. So that's a positive, but we still, again, think that speaking specifically to the organic research and making that a permanent priority is just smart thinking, where whether you agree that chemicals are good in agriculture, we are running out of cheap sources of oil, and we're going to want to save using those petrochemicals for healthcare in places where we really need them. In terms of the issue around the credibility and the need for a standard, undoubtedly having a provincial standard helps address some of the kinds of problems that came up. For example, one of the cases of fraud that was reported on in the CBC happened before the national standard came in 2009. So, really the true reporting on that story was we came up with a national standard. At that point was when we had some teeth to be able to go after that particular company for fraud. You're also seeing that 92% of organic produce has either zero detectable pesticide. In that set of tests, 52% had zero detectable pesticide. All but 8% had less than 5% of the maximum allowable limit for that given pesticide. And of that 5%, we haven't seen the data to know. That could have just simply been, it could have been fraud, it could have been water runoff. But let's say it was all fraud. 92% of the time, you're getting what you're paid for. We'd love to see the same level of scrutiny applied to the conventional food system and see how we're doing. We think, we're happy to put our record up. We believe that we're by and large delivering on what consumers are looking for out of our sector. And when we close the loopholes on marketing, it just puts a little bit more strength in the system.
Thank you, Jody. Thank you for
Right.
coming today.
Thank you very much, everyone.